Wait,
Good
oh yeah,
afternoon,
oh,
everybody, and welcome into Capitol View, a webcast brought to you by the Daily Journal and djournal.com. I'm your host, Brad Locke, joined as always by Bobby Harrison, Capitol Bureau Chief down there in Jackson. This webcast comes to you every Monday afternoon, starting a little bit late today because Bobby was on assignment. So you staying busy, Bobby?
I'm staying busy, but I'm looking ready. I'm ready for some turkey, some turkey and football, not far away.
I feel the same way, Bobby. But we do have some stuff to talk about this Thanksgiving week. Still plenty to discuss, Bobby. And so we're going to start. We're going to start talking about Senator Roger Wicker. Of course, the November 8th elections were it was a very good night for Republicans. Of course, Donald Trump won the presidential election, and also, Bobby, not to be not to be overlooked. The Republicans held on to their majority in the U.S. Senate, and Roger Wicker had a lot to do with that, didn't he?
That's right. He was in charge of. He was elected by the Senate membership, I guess, 2 years ago to serve as the chair of their election committee. And when he got that job, some kind of scoffed and said it was a daunting task because the Republican, a third of the seats in the Senate are up every 2 years. They serve 6-year terms, and this particular time there's a lot more Republican Senate seats up for re-election than Democratic seats. In addition, there was a lot of Senate seats in states that are traditionally Democrat, so that they thought the conventional wisdom was that the Republicans would have a hard time holding on to their majority. And they lost 2 seats, at least 2 seats, probably just 2 seats, but they're going to hold on to the majority with 51 and 52 seats. There's still the runoff election down in Louisiana, which will be decided in December. The Republican is favored in that election. If he wins that, I think they'll have a 52-48 majority.
Hey, Bobby, this job that Wicker had was especially challenging because of Donald Trump and his campaign. It caused a lot of Republicans, a lot of people running for election for the U.S. Senate to kind of back away a little bit from him. And that did affect, I guess, you could say it did affect some of those who did not win, Bobby. But it just seemed to make the job all that more challenging for Wicker when he's trying to bring these two sides together.
That's right. You had some candidates who were endorsing Trump, and then after the Hollywood, what was that? The tape came out with Billy Bush from Access Hollywood or what it was. They were saying we don't endorse him anymore. Then they were endorsing him again, and some candidates never endorsed him. So it was just it was kind of like, I guess it was kind of like herding cats for Senator Wicker to get through that process, but he was successful in doing it, and he's received praise from a lot of quarters for doing that. Of course, in the general election, Senator Wicker, he's of course from Tupelo Republican. He was a staunch staunch Trump supporter all through the general election and never wavered in that support. But he did have members who he was trying to help get reelected or trying to help to get elected who did kind of run away from the Republican nominee during the process. And as you said, some of those were successful, some were not. But it's important to note that best I can tell, the Republican nominees who ran away from Trump, most of them lost, but they also were in states that Trump lost. So I don't know if it was, I don't know if they lost because they ran away from it, or they just lost because they were in states that tended to vote Democrat this time around.
And one very important byproduct of this, Bobby, is that with the Senate, with the Republicans maintaining their hold in the Senate, the majority, that means Thad Cochran, the other senator from Mississippi, will continue in his role as appropriations chair, which is a very, very important position, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. The senior senator from Mississippi, if you will, he claims Oxford as his home now, and he will continue as appropriations chair. And so that's a big win for Mississippi, and that was one reason that that added to the significance of Roger Wicker having that position during this election cycle. It's an important position, Brad, in the scope of things. I think it's 6th in terms of leadership in the Senate amongst the Republicans. So that it shows his colleagues have a lot of respect for him. He can't hold that post for the next round of elections in 2018 because he'll be on the ballot in 2018. Right. So he'll be having to run himself. He'll be a heavy favorite to win re-election, but he'll still have to focus on that race and not helping other people get elected.
All right, let's now talk about a couple of issues on the state level here. Governor Phil Bryant and Attorney General Jim Hood, one a Republican, one a Democrat. They agree on something, Bobby. We're talking about the internet sales tax, which we've talked about before, either here on the podcast. But both want to see a way for online purchases to be taxed. In other words, if you buy something, on Amazon.com and here in Mississippi, you don't have to pay a Mississippi sales tax, basically.
That's right. There's a 7% sales tax on retail items, most retail items in Mississippi. But due to a Supreme Court ruling back in 1992, I think, which said that if a company did not have a brick and mortar structure in the state, then the state could not charge a sales tax if they ordered something remotely. At the time, I guess most of those remote purchases, Brad, were on the phone. I don't think the internet was too far along back in '92.
Yeah.
But it's the same principle. If you order on the internet or on the you can call on the phone, and the company doesn't have a building in your state where they do business, then they're not beholden to collect that sales tax and turn it back into the state. So that a lot of states have been concerned about that over the years.
Yeah.
And just by happenstance, over the past couple of weeks, Attorney General Jim Hood, the state's only statewide elected Democrat, and Phil Bryant, of course, our Republican governor, have both taken positions on that. Hood joined some other attorneys general in asking the Supreme Court in a Colorado decision that's pending before the court to reverse that earlier decision and requires companies to collect sales tax for states, even if they don't have a brick and mortar building in that state. And Governor Bryant in his budget proposal he released last week, spoke of either the Supreme Court reversing decision, Congress passing a law to reverse the Supreme Court decision, or Mississippi passing a law that would sort of fly in the face of the Supreme Court ruling, and then that could be challenged by the Supreme Court. So they both on the same page on that issue.
I mean, we have what they call a use tax, and you're supposed to self-report, I guess, on your income tax, Bobby, when you make a purchase, on Amazon or eBay or whatever. Not really enforceable, though, is it?
No, it's not enforceable. I forget the numbers, but you're talking about the most that's ever been collected through that use tax, I think, is around $260,000 over a year's period.
Yeah, 274, I think it was.
Okay, and it's first of all, most people just don't think to report that. I mean, just giving people the benefit of the doubt, most people don't think to report it. And then second of all, if they do, I mean, it's just hard to keep up with those records to report it. Now, like if you go to Memphis, for instance, and buy a car, you come back to Mississippi to buy a car tag, they're going to collect in the sales tax and the tax in the courthouse when you go to buy a car tag. But if you just buy a bunch of clothes on Amazon or a bunch of books or whatnot, I mean, that tax is not going to be collected, and it adds up. It's really bad. It hurts the state, and both Hood and Bryant both agree that it also hurts local merchants, because the local merchants is having to collect that tax when they make a purchase and turn it back into the state. But if you buy online, the company you buy for online doesn't have to.
Right, Bryant mentioned that issue in his budget proposal, which we'll switch gears to that now to talk about last week. Bryant submitting his proposal for the next fiscal year budget, which starts July 1st. Bobby, what were a couple of things that stood out to you from Bryant's proposal there?
Well, there were a lot of cuts in it to a bunch of different agencies. He did put a little bit more money in the Mississippi Adequate Education Program, $16 million, which is still be over 150 million or more underfunded at that rate. But most other agencies, a lot of other agencies suffered cuts, or at least were level funded. What he did do was any growth, the projected growth in revenue, he directed most of that to reserve funds, to rainy day funds and other reserve funds to shore those up and cut. I mean, some of the big cuts were to one of the biggest cuts was to the public television and radio. That was what was that, Brad? You have 11%, 9 or 11%
like
cut.
9.5%. Yeah.
In the scope of a $6 billion budget, it wasn't a lot of money, but it's a lot of money to them. And he said he was doing it in his budget narrative. He said that the public television radio talked about the need to become more self-sufficient, so he was trying to help them to do that. So I don't know if they appreciate that favor or not, but he's trying to get one. Of course, this budget it'll be submitted to the legislature, and the legislature will come with a budget during the 2017 session for the new budget year that starts on July 1st. And in the coming days, Brad, the legislative leadership would develop its own budget proposal and to be considered by the full legislature when it convenes in January.
And he released this budget proposal, I think, a day after he met with the Legislative Budget Committee and agreed to raise the revenue estimate, Bobby.
That's right.
How does that work for people who may not understand what they're doing there?
Well, you have to have a revenue estimate, the amount of money the states is projected to collect during that budget year, fiscal year, before they can even start working on the budget. And so the early last week, the Legislative Budget Committee, which includes the Speaker, Speaker Philip Gunn, Lieutenant Governor Tate Reeves, and other key legislators, met with the governor and took on the recommendation of the state's financial experts. They raised the estimate a little bit for this year, and then also set an estimate for the upcoming budget year. And it was amazing how it all worked, because they did that budget estimate one day. The very next day, he was able to release his budget. Makes you think he kind of had a little heads up on what the revenue estimating committee was going to recommend to the legislators and governor what the revenue estimate should be. But that's a story for another day, I guess. It's not a big deal, but it's just kind of funny how that works.
Yeah. All right. Well, good stuff, Bobby, as always. And I mean, so much still even though they're not in session yet, still lots going on in the state capitol. Bobby's all over it.
Yeah.
Rediscovered. Yeah. I'm sorry. What?
Yeah. One thing, Brad, we'd be remiss if we didn't mention, of course, they're working on the revamp of the school.
Right.
Funding formula, and the fact that they won't release the contract with a company that they contracted with to help rewrite this formula is creating quite a bit of a commotion down here, and it's going to be interesting to see how that all shakes out in the coming weeks.
Yeah, that's Mississippi Today tried to get the details on the contract. They were denied, and basically there seems just simply to be some dispute on whether this is or should be normal policy when it comes to contracts.
Well, it's I don't know if it should be normal policy, but I mean, the legislature writes their laws, and the legislature exempts itself from the open records and open meetings law. So they say that the legislative leadership says it has a right not to release this contract. Now, other people, I think, make a good point in saying this is public money being spent in this contract, so it should be available for the public to look at. So it's an interesting issue. Even the governor last week kind of, he's close with both the speaker and lieutenant governor, and he said that he believes all contracts should be public. And the Secretary of State Delbert Hosemann today said pretty much the same thing. So you got Republicans taking a different view of this tack than what the Republican legislative leadership is the tack they've taken on this issue.
Well, you and I are journalists, Bobby, so I think people know where we fall on this issue.
Yeah, right.
Transparency is good when it comes to government. All right, well, good stuff, Bobby. We'll be tracking that story along with everything else that's going on down there in Jackson. Again, we come to you every Monday, usually about 2:00. We got a late start today because Bobby was on assignment, but thanks for following along. Thanks for watching. You can catch the replay if you missed any of this or just want to watch it here at djournal.com if you want to watch it again. And I guess that's it till next Monday. Bobby, hope you get your fill of turkey and football Thursday. And I'll try to do the same. Until next week, I'm Brad Locke for Bobby Harrison. Y'all have a good one.
Take care, Brad.